begins. Last session of Thursday afternoon, and it's on tips on how to get, on how to get published in academic journals. So, why am I qualified to give this talk? Well, I've edited some 40 books, 2 encyclopedias, an anthology of post-Keynesian economics. I created a journal, and editor-in-chief of another journal. We receive about 400 articles a year that have to be evaluated. I'm on the editorial board of 15 journals. I review about 30 articles a year. I do book series, so I do a lot of editing, in addition to writing. So, the purpose here is to try to give you some advice, answer some questions you may have. And we're going to start here with the aim and scope of the review of political economy. And this is because I think one of the overwhelming, so I desk reject 50 or 60% of the papers that are sent to me. And the main reason has to do with fit. They don't fit the journal. So I'll give you an example. Last week, I got a paper from a very well-known author. He's responding, and it's a reply to a paper, a very critical paper on Keynes, written by Tom Fowley in the Japanese Journal of Political Economy, not sure, but a Japanese journal. And this author sends me the review. You know, if you're going to write a critical response to a paper written in a certain journal, send it to that journal, not to me. A couple days ago, I got a paper from someone who says he's analyzed the Journal of Economic Issues for the last 30 years and found this and that. Why send it to me? Send it to the Journal of Economic Issues as your first journal. If they turn you down, if they reject it, then fine, it's fair ball. But as editor, there's a courtesy involved in that I shouldn't publish, you should give that journal. And also, it might be that your paper, I get papers sometimes on issues of development in Africa, and those I find are a stretch. We're not a development journal. So certainly something to do with Brazil is, I think, okay. India, big development countries. But this paper I got a couple of months ago was about, hot dogs being sold in a little cart in some African country. Fit with my journal. Maybe it could fit with another journal. So the point I'm trying to say here is learn the journal where you want to send your paper. Every journal has a name and scope. Every single journal. So read what it says. The Review of Political Economy is a double-line peer-reviewed journal welcoming constructive and critical contributions. Right? Constructive and critical. Right? So, I get these papers sometimes that are borderline mainstream. Maybe not the best journal to send it to. In all areas of political economy, including behavioral, ecological, feminist, institution, Schraftian, Schumpeterian, etc. We also encourage submission in agent-based, thoughtful consistency. We publish theoretical and empirical research. Some journals don't publish empirical. Right? And if your paper is uber empirical, go look at what the journal has published in the last 10 years. And you get a sense of what kind of journal Right? You should start at this point, if you're a PhD student, you should by now have a good knowledge of journals. You should know what is the JPKE, the International Journal of Political Economy, Cambridge, Roche, e.g. Economia. Okay, you should now have an understanding of what these journals do and publish, etc. And there's major overlap between Roche and the JPKE. But not so much with, so you just have to get a sense of what the journal's about. So, a couple weeks ago, I got a paper from this guy, and he quoted zero heterodox person in the paper. And so I rejected the paper. I said, you have to try to engage with the readers of that journal. And you have to try to engage with those who wrote in that journal. So if you send a heterodox paper to my journal, I expect to see heterodox references in your bibliography. And I expect to, maybe a few references to something that's been published in that journal. You send it to the JPKE, make sure you quote some papers from the JPKE. You have to, right? Does your paper fit with Roche? Go back and read what we've done in the last 10 years. Hopefully, and if you do a Google Scholar search, with keywords from your paper, hopefully something will come out, So familiarize yourself with those journals. So I guess reject 50 or 60, and the total number of rejections overall was about 90. I think last year was 92%. And that's a pretty average journal. I think Cambridge has about that. There are ways for you to, if you go on the web page of the journal at Taylor & France and Wiley, the rejection rates are usually there, or the acceptance rate. So you have to try to weigh that against, And some journals, Cambridge Journal, takes 2 years to publish, sometimes a little bit more. It might take a year and a half to even get a response, a final decision from Cambridge, or a first decision. So certain journals have certain, and if you look at the history of the journal, if you go to, I should have taken a picture of it, because these data now, these metrics are now being published. But it'll say, who follows me on Twitter here? Do you remember something I put the other day where I say, at Roche, we don't sit on our asses, right? Because now we have the time it takes between when you send your paper in and when your paper is either desk, it's 1 day at Roche. 1 day, in 1 day, the paper is either rejected or it's been assigned to one of the associate editors or myself for review. In some journals, it's like 2 weeks. So depending on your situation, whether you want to try to get something published quickly or something, these are metrics you need to take into consideration. And there's also some metrics now available between submission and beyond the rejection, initial rejection or assignment, how long it takes to get a first decision, RR or a rejection. And in our case, I think it's 80 days, and I'd like to try to get that down. And I'll have something to say about that later. But in some other journals, it's like 8 months or something. So go to the journals page, research the journal, look at the metrics. The metrics now are available, okay? And will give you an indication of whether you want to submit them. Okay. Biggest problem. I'm not sure if avoid desk rejects. I mean, desk rejection can be a good thing as well. Well, I'll get to that. Paper's not a good fit, like I said. Too long, the topic is not a good fit. Aim for a paper of about 8,500 words. Each table, each graph, each figure is 500 words, or 400, 450. If you send me a paper with 8,000 words and 10 graphs, you're up to 12,000 words. For most journals, that's a problem, because most journals publish about 65,000 words. And if you send a paper that takes up 12 or 13,000, you've actually taken up 20% of the journal. And what I want to do is I want to try to get 7 or 8 articles in there. So people who subscribe get a sense, hey, I'm getting my money's worth. Rope publishes 8 articles every issue, as opposed to 5 if you send me long papers. Any long paper is a problem for editors, because I get nasty emails from the publisher saying, no, the issue comes up to like 69,000 words, so now they have to pay extra, the publisher's extra, to add those extra pages, whereas you've paid the subscription costs. So these are costs that Taylor and Francis are just absorbing. And you might let me do that one issue, but certainly not multiple issues. Now, this said, mea culpa, the length doesn't apply to rope anymore. We've been given, I now publish 15, 16, 17 articles per issue. That's because we're getting so many submissions. But other journals, it certainly still applies. So on the journal's website, it's written, we encourage papers of 75, 8,000 words, including graphs. Okay? Well, like I said, consultants said 10 years, but yeah. Publishing in different journals, right? If your research borders, if your research is on one dominant topic, you may consider publishing in Rope, JPKE, and Roke. These journals overlap, and the reason is we might have different readership, or you might try to be bold and send it to the Journal of Economic Issues. They're read mainly by institutionalists. So that's a good way of getting your name out there. I get this all the time. Don't send me an email saying, is this a good fit? I'm just going to reject the paper right there. That's your job to do. It's not my job. I'm not going to take the time to read the paper and figure out whether it's a good fit. It's your job to do your due diligence, look up the journal's history, etc. Okay? But desk rejects can be a good thing. For me, you'll get a desk reject within a day, maybe 2. Well, that means you don't have to wait 8 weeks to get rejected. If you're rejected right away, you can turn around and send it to another journal right away. Okay? And like I said, a desk reject is not necessarily about the content of the paper. To be honest, I can't evaluate the content of every paper that comes in to me. I can't read 300 to 400 papers a year. I just can't. So I look at whether it's a good fit, the topic, I read the abstract, I get a good sense, I just reject. Or then, if not, I assign it to an associate editor. Your Professor Simone Deos is one of the associate editors, Silvio Capes from Brazil, Antonella Stirati from Italy, Steve Pressman in the United States. These are the 4 associate editors, and myself. But once I assign the paper, I might assign it to me as well, if it's on monetary policy. Each of these people have a little bit different, right? Dr. Deos is in Brazil. I get a lot of papers from Brazil. But if it's a paper on the super multiplier by someone from Rio, I might assign it to Dr. Stirati of Italy, because she's a Shrafian as well. So, but they will then read it a little bit more carefully, and they might at best reject because of the content. They didn't think the paper's that good enough. Okay? Okay. Structure, I think, is the biggest, once the paper gets accepted and is assigned to an editor. This is part of the content evaluation. If the paper has just bad structure, you need an introduction, you need a conclusion, and you might be laughing. No one's laughing? But I get these papers that have no introductions. Yeah, no, and by seasoned scholars at Cambridge. Not kidding. I'm not gonna mention names. But if you give me money. But, yeah. And like, I get these papers, I'm going, and I'm reading, and I think it's the introduction, I'm going, and an introduction, an introduction has to be clearly written. Introduction it's meant to introduce the topic, and then you say what you're gonna do, and how you're gonna do it. This paper will be divided into 3 sections. The first part will, that's an introduction. You're introducing the reader to what you're going to do. No, this person just got into it. I'm going, no, reject. Okay, that's a rejection, and that's a reject because of just bad structure. I once got a paper, it was about 8,000 words, fine. And I start reading it and going, wow, the first paragraph is 1 page long. Oh, it's 2 pages long. It's 3 pages long. It was 1 paragraph. I'm a British. It was a 40 pages worth, 1 paragraph. So a paper is a question that you're asking. What is the cause of inflation in post-pandemic era? Start with answering that questions with bullet points. Right? Table of contents. This, the war, bottlenecks, and then write your paper and having sections and subsections. Okay, a lot of papers, even the subsection is not well structured. You gotta give I learned how to write through Bob Halbronner. Bob Halbronner sat me down. Do you know who Bob Halbronner is? Wrote the book, the most published book in economics, apart from the general theory, The Worldly Philosophy. And he was my teacher at the new school. And Bob, taught me how to write. How to be, don't try to impress people with your language. Try to impress them with your ideas and your structure. That's how you gain confidence from the reviewers. The number 1 thing you gotta do is make the reviewers happy. If you are looking over your paper and you're going, it's not well structured, I only have 1 section, be very critical. Writing a paper is easy. Self-editing is the difficult and challenging part of writing a paper. Show it to a colleague. Tell them to be nasty. Right? Okay? So, equations, if you're gonna have equations, okay, make sure your math is on top of it. Because when I choose the reviewers, if your paper has a lot of equations, I've got a dozen reviewers that I know that do mathematical finance, and I'm gonna send your paper to them. At least one of your reviewers will be a math expert. And I'm gonna tell you, half the times, the math reviewer says, this is really bad math. Okay? If you're gonna do math, make sure your math is good and solid. Make sure your graphs and tables have permissions, are sourced well. That's what I said. Each equation, 100 words. I get papers with 30 equations. That's 3,000 plus an 8,000 words, plus 10 paragraphs. You have to do 15,000. Okay? And the quality of the English. So, for those who English is not their mother tongue. One thing I found is I've received a couple of papers from French scholars in French. And I have translated them using a translator, Google Translate or something. And then I just read over the English translation. Much easier. So you might want to write your paper in Portuguese first, then get it translated. Or if you get funds from your department, send the paper to get revised. It's about 300 euros. You can contact me. I use someone. She's a retired professor in England from history. She probably knows more about economics now than I do. She's done a lot of work for the journal. She's excellent. And she's 250, I think, euros. Might be a lot of money, but some departments, some universities will pay for that. And I get this all the time. Oh, I don't want to get the paper translated, read over for the English until the paper is accepted. Well, I'm going to tell you that some reviewers have rejected the paper because of the bad English. If they can't read the paper properly, they're going to say, look, no, okay? So the paper is going to get, maybe the revised resubmit, even if it's rejected here, and you're going to send it to another, look, it's worth getting it proofread now, before you send it out. Again, make the reviewers happy. Don't give them an opportunity to say, bad math, bad English, right? Said this before, but there's another reason that while it doesn't apply to Rome, but to other journals it still does. And the reason is, when I had a 65,000 word limit, and let's say I'm putting your, like 5 papers, and they're all a little bit over, they're 9,000 each, or I put 6, I come up to about 55,000 words. I'm going, oh, I've got 10,000 left. Her paper's 12,000. She should technically be the next one in line to get published, but oh well, I'm going to push her off the waiting list. Okay? And then I'm going to, her paper is 9,200 words. Go. She goes in. Even though she's further down the list. Okay? So there's an advantage. There's a great advantage to, speaking of paper length, well, you can certainly send a paper that's 6,000 words. I've published notes that are 4,000 words, 3,000 words. A note on, if you read a paper technical and you're good in math or the econometrics, and you look at the paper, you go, the econometrics are really bad. You write a critical note on Rochon's paper on race. 3,000-4,000. That's a note, and that's fine, and that counts as a paper, right? Because it's going to get reviewed. And I'll send your paper to an econometrician who might say, no, this student is right. Okay? Lit reviews can be a little bit longer. I like lit reviews. The last lit review I published was January of this year by Silvio Capes, who wrote a lit review, and it's a little over 10,000 even, of monetary policy and income distribution in the mainstream literature. And that paper is getting quoted. It's the type of paper, if you do a right up-to-date lit review, you're doing the profession a lot of service. Old people like me, we don't have time to, keep up with all that literature. So if you've got the time and energy, and you know what, it's part of your PhD, right? You gotta know that literature. Well, think about turning it into a lit review for a journal. It's a great way of getting published, and I'm gonna tell you, I know that I've had this conversation with Matthias Vernengo. He loves lit review, I love lit review, and other journals do too. So think about it. Don't pad. I just had one this morning, where, and I don't check for that, but then it, it gets a reviewer mind. Oh, he's got 10 or she got 10 references in there that are not cited. Don't pad your references. It doesn't come along across great. It looks at you like you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and look at my references, look at how many papers so just quote them or just remove them. Plagiarism, I'm not going to say anything about it. Self-plagiarism. It's becoming an issue. I've rejected a few papers. The reviewer will catch it, maybe. Now, don't forget, I'm going to say this, but if you send me a paper, and whoever gets it assigned, when I get it assigned, I'll do a Google search, even if I know the topic right? Because I don't want to always ask Lavoie to review a paper on industrial stuff, right? So I'm going to do a Google search to see who's writing something recent. So I'm going to send it to the best possible fit. What's your area?
Food security.
Yeah, I'm not going to send her a paper on industrial money. I might send her a paper on food insecurity, and she knows the literature, and she might, and this happens, where the reviewer gets back saying, yeah, this paper is written by Rochon, and there's like 5 paragraphs that are completely copy and paste from another paper he published. That's self-help plagiarism, and that's going to get you banned. Okay? That's going to get you banned. So, avoid at all costs. Never submit your paper to 2 journals, and I'm going to tell you this happens all the time. Now, when I choose the referee often will get back to me and say, I just reviewed that paper for this journal. So I contact you, you're banned for life. I contact the journal that you sent it to as well. You're banned. Paper's rejected, you're banned from that journal. So if you're a heterodox paper, you're banned from a JPKE and wrote. Wow. Not a good way to begin your career. Okay? Look, it's ad. Or I find out because I write to you and go, okay, I'm going to accept your paper. Actually, no. And I go, that's your red flag. And I end up Googling and I end up, finding out. Okay? So it's the biggest no-no and it's going to get you banned. Look, it's a shitty process. You got to wait 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 3 months, 4 months for a decision. I know it sucks, but that's the game. Okay? If this happened recently, a woman, a friend of mine in Italy, she was not getting a response from the Cambridge Journal. It was a good paper. I said, look, send it to me. I'll consider it. But you have to withdraw your paper. You have to write to Cambridge and say, I'm withdrawing my paper, because then it becomes a situation where you've submitted it to 2 journals. You withdraw it from Cambridge. You include the email. You said, look, here's the proof that I withdrew it, and that's all. Okay? Paper must be in its final form. I've gotten paid. I get papers that have what's that editing thing? Huh? Yeah, comments. Yeah. Comments. What the hell? Beautiful. Your paper is not finished. And then, you know what? You write back and you go, oh, I'm very sorry. I'll clean it up and send it to you. I might say, nope, sorry, you have one chance. You know, sometimes I'll say, okay. But don't be surprised if the editor says, no, I'm sorry. It's sloppy work, and I'm not interested in considering a sloppy journal, a sloppy paper. Okay? So, and I get that maybe 10 times a year on 300-400 pages. But still, I get them. So make sure it's in the final form, good English, good math, etc. So we have a double-blind review. Not every journal has that. I think with Economia, you see who the author is, okay? Try not to say, I wrote this. They say we, or, Rochon, in a recent paper, Rochon says this, okay? So it doesn't mean that Rochon is the author of this paper, but the author is referring to her. So don't try to reveal who you are, because, I met this guy, and I don't like him. So he sends me a paper, and I'm just going to just reject it because he, okay? So don't try to reveal, it's not true. It's true. He did not even pay for beer the other night.
You went more than me, so you're very,
Excuses, look at, see? Okay, so don't try to reveal yourself because you don't know, look, a lot of people hate me. A lot of people hate me. And if they know it's me, they might just reject the paper just because it's me. Okay? So try to be anonymous as much as you can. We're going to try to go through a triple blind review. We would be the first heterodox journal to do that. One of the first journals to do that. So the way it works now is when you send in the paper, I get to see that paper, I know it's you, and then I decide how to assign it. A triple blind review would be that I don't know who it is. So we minimize the possibility that I might not like you or you. So it takes, because the editor is only human, full of emotions, and I remember that guy. Okay? So we might go through triple. We're looking at the technology and how to do it. Okay. The review process. Reviewed by 2 referees, double blind. When I get a paper on food insecurity, it might not be a good match for my journal. I don't know the history of my journal, but it might be good for another journal. So it's about to fit. But I get a paper, and I'm going to assign it, let's say, to myself, and then, or whoever is assigned to them, the associate editor will do a good search for who should review the paper. Who should review the paper? And I try to find the best, and I sometimes Google just to see if, because I can't ask the same people over and over again. 400 papers, I reject half of them. 200 papers, I still have to find 400 reviewers every year. So people like you may be on my list next. I'll get to that later. But yeah. So I'll Google monetary policy and there's a paper published in 2023. Okay. I'll ask that person. Okay, I've never heard of her or him before. Great. Okay. Let me know. Let the editor know if you have a conflict. Right? Oh, Robert Gutman and I got into almost a fist fight one day, and Robert would totally win, by the way. And he doesn't like me. I love Robert Gutman, by the way. Great guy. He's not one of the people who hates me. But yeah, let me know. Now, I don't have to accept what you say, but if I'm a nice guy, I'll probably say, okay, yeah, fine. Okay? Don't send me a list of 20 people. 2, right? Then I'm gonna say, oh, you're hated by everyone. Yeah, tell me. And that's fair game. That's fair game. He was uber critical of a paper of mine, and I got the feeling that we got into an argument after, and fair game, fair game. So, ROPE is, the editorial board is gender balanced. So this is one thing that I did when I became editor-in-chief. And one of the things I tried to do is get a gender balance in the allocation of referees. And the reason is points of views. Maybe this is a food insecurity. Maybe there's a gender dimension to food insecurity. Are women more prone to food insecurities given quality of jobs, etc., single mothers, etc., right? So there might be a gender balance that the author of the paper didn't think about. So by asking one man and one woman, the woman might say, there's a gender dimension here that the author has not considered. Okay? I'll get to that if it's raised and how to deal with it. I told you about this. I told you about this. I told you about this. 8 weeks, you know what? It took 4 or 5 months easier. During COVID. Look, I'm at home with 3 kids. I can't do a review in 8 weeks. You gotta give me 3 months. I get it. Or, you know what? After 10 weeks, after 8 weeks, the system generates a letter. Hey, come on, get off your ass. Your review is late. That's the actual letter that's and then the author, the reviewer doesn't reply. 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and then says, oh, I don't have time anymore. So now I just wasted 12 weeks of 3 months. And now you're writing to say, what's going on? And I go, I have to find another reviewer. And that other reviewer might need 2 months as well. Okay? So now that's why sometimes it can get 6, 7, 8 months. Or, if I get 2 reviewers, conflicting reviews, that happens. It happened to me this week. Reject a paper, worst thing ever. Minor revisions, great paper. So, if I am not feeling well that day, it's a reject. So, for Roe to be considered for a revise and resubmit, you gotta have either 2 minor reviews, minor changes, or a minor and a major. 2 major revisions, you might get rejected. Or if you get a rejection, you might get rejected. Okay? But I like when you get worst paper ever, this is a good paper. So for me, that means that you've touched on something potentially, sensitive, right? So that means if I publish a paper, some people might write papers and say, I am writing a critical response to Rochon, blah, 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 right? And then another paper would say, in a recent paper, Rochon wrote a wonderful paper. I'm going, oh, so now people can attack the paper or like the paper. So what I would usually do in this case is I'll send it to a third person. So that's going to take another 6 weeks. Fine. Girls. And so now we're up to, so now we got 8 weeks, 12 weeks later, one reviewer says he can't do it. And then another reviewer takes 8 weeks, now we're up to 20 weeks. And then I get a rejection and a great, accept the paper. So 20 weeks, and I get another reviewer to talk, to break the time, break the time. And that's another, so we're up to 26, that's half a year. Okay, so, I'll get to that later, but, that's why sometimes it takes time. I've noticed lately, I was looking before coming here today, I was looking at the website. And I noticed a lot of the papers we've asked like 8 reviewers and 7 have said no. So the associate editor is trying to find an 8th person or a 9th person. So we seem to be getting a lot of rejections lately, and these are probably because people are busy. People are busy. Now, let me say, if you're a PhD student, or if you're a young scholar, you're going on the job market, you're finishing your PhD soon, you're going to be going on the job market, and you'd like to have one paper published. You submit your paper, write to me, say, I'm finishing my PhD, and I'm going on the job market. Don't ask me to accept the paper. But you can say, is there a way of making the review process quicker? Absolutely. I've got 10 people in the back of my head right now who will write the review the next day or within a week. Right? Sergio Rossi, I don't know how he does it. He sends me a 3-page review the next morning. How? Okay? So, and a great review, right? So, tell me, and I'm going to try to expedite that review process. And maybe I'll get an answer to you within 2 weeks. Okay? So you don't have to wait 4 months, 5 months. Okay? And then if you get a revise and resubmit, if you get a rejection, you got a rejection within 2 weeks. A revise and resubmit, you work the paper fast within a week. I'll have something to say about that. You send it back to me. I send it back to the reviewers and I say, give me an answer within a couple of days. Yeah, but I've had decisions, final decisions within 2 weeks. Or 3 weeks max. Okay? Keep that in mind. It may be sent back to the original reviewers, or I might just decide to look over myself. Okay? Or whoever the associate editor is. There's no need, we're not under any obligation to send it back to the reviewers. Maybe in the case where you got a rejection and you got an acceptance from the other reviewer, and I might, at that point, I might send it back to the original reviewers to say, I know you hated the paper, what do you think of this one? Okay? So, since the best you can ask for is a revise and resubmit. In the 12 years of Roche and the 3-4 years of Roche, I have never accepted a paper as is. Okay? I'll never do it. No one will ever do it. Okay? If you get an acceptance right away off the bat, question the journal that you sent it to. Seriously. Okay? Now, the best you can ask for is a revise and resubmit. In the letter I send to you, it says this is not a promise to publish. But, you know what? You haven't gotten desk rejected. You didn't get, and I desk reject 50% of the papers. And then, when you get your acceptance letter, I'm already close to that 90% rejection. So if you get a revise and resubmit, that means that, hey, I like the paper, it's a good fit, the reviewers seem to like it, okay? It's not a promise to publish, but I'm interested in publishing it potentially. And then the onus is all on you at that point. You got to revise your paper in such a way that you're going to please the referees. But a revise and resubmit means, hey, potentially, I want to publish this paper. So that's a good sign. Don't write to me after 2 months or 3 months or 4. Wait 6 months. Okay? Don't hassle the editor. Speculates, I told you this, are best you can ask for. So you get 2 reviews. One says, oh, amazing paper. The other one says, eh. So they contradict each other. And you're reading the reviews and you're confused. It's normal. That's when you ask the editor for some advice. You say, look, I had one good review, one bad review, what do I do? And at that point, I'll give you some advice. I said, look, for me, the negative comments are really important, especially comment 4 or 5, So ask questions. What do I do? What do you suggest I do? They conflict each other. Now, I know who wrote the reviews, and reviewers have reputations. She's notorious for writing negative reviews. I know that. She's extra harsh. So when I send her a paper and she sends me a harsh review, that's what I expected. So I might tell the reviewer, well, I think reviewer 1 was a bit harsh. Oh, okay. Makes you a little bit more happy. Okay? Now, for the record, I've refused reviews before. I've rejected reviews. Happens all the time. A review that says, this is a good paper, I like it, publish it. Not a review. Okay? And I get those a lot. So I write back to the reviewers and go, the author spent weeks, months writing this paper, he or she deserves feedback. Not, this is good, publish it, or I don't like it, reject. Okay? So, if the reviewer doesn't want to write a longer review, I'll just reject the review and go and find someone else to write. Okay, I fundamentally believe that you deserve good feedback. When you get a revised and resubmit, you have to send me back a revised version. And you have to send me a letter that says, how did you address every single argument of both reviews? Now, you read the paper, you read the reviews, and you go, oh yeah, reviewer 1, argument 1 I like, I deal with it. Argument 4, no. I disagree. Okay? So, when you rewrite your paper, you have to address every point. You got to make the reviewer happy. Often, many times, upon the second review, one reviewer says, this author did not deal with my criticism. And I'm going, sorry, I have to reject the paper. Because at this point, look, it's a game. You write a paper, you have to do a revised version, and you have to deal with the reviewers. That's it. If you don't, your paper gets rejected. But it doesn't mean that you have to deal with everything within your paper. In the letter you send, you said to me, you write reviewer 1, and some people are very good at it. On page 3, the first comment on page 3, I added this. And so there were some reviewers may not even read your paper again. They might just read the letter you sent. And if you tell the reviewer, I dealt with this in this, question 5, argument 5, however, I disagree. And here's why. You're telling the reviewer, I'm not going to put this in my paper, and here's why. That's fine, that's fair. The reviewer will say, she took into consideration my argument, that's all I wanted. And when you revise your paper, you don't have to incorporate everything within your paper. It might just be a footnote. Footnote 3, one of the reviewers suggested that, and I disagree, and, I think it's beyond the scope of this paper, but, I would say this. All right, that's a perfect footnote, okay? But deal with everything a reviewer asks you to. And I think that one of the major reasons why papers are rejected after an R&R is because of this. By far, you have not dealt with the reviewer's comments. Now, I have never gone against the opinions of reviewers, okay? Maybe once or twice. I can tell you, reviewers get pissed off with me, okay? And I have to justify, well, I thought you were being a bit harsh. I thought that the author did deal with it, and okay, so if they get pissed off with me, imagine how they're going to get pissed off with you. Okay, make them happy. Here's the next slide. The decision is final. It's final. Okay, I got this one person rejected after an RR. You're stupid and your journal is stupid. I'll never submit there again. Okay, 6 months later, I get a paper from this. And I desk reject. I go, no, I'm sorry, I'm doing you a favor. I don't want you to publish a paper in a stupid journal. And that's happened many times. Many times. Look, don't. And you know what? I'll tell you something. If I have a decision to make, and I don't know how to go, and I've met you at a conference, and we went for coffee, and I'll tell you something about that in a second, I might go, she was nice, and in a non-creepy way, but, or a guy, there you go, oh, he was nice, and, okay, she is a young scholar, I'll give him and this is true. If you're a PhD student, I might give you an R&R to encourage you to, Steve Pressman, who's a former editor, now associate editor, sent me a paper that was RR 7 times. A young student, PhD student, I think 3rd year. Steve saw potential in this paper. The student was so polite and receptive to the criticism. And Steve worked with her 7 times, and now we're publishing the paper. Okay? I was once attacked in the lobby of a New York hotel at a conference by this woman. She says, how dare you reject my paper? And she was a well-known author. I go, it's not because you're well-known that you get a pass. All right? What's your name?
John.
John. Hi, John. I'm going to accept your paper. You went through an RR and you did the work, and the reviewers got back with just a little bit of minor issues, minor. So I'm going to give you a conditional acceptance. Please just look at it. Oh, I don't have time. You accept the paper as is, or if you're going to be a diva with me, it's not going to work, and you're going to piss the editor off. Look, you got a paper, it's made it this far, and you're going to pull a stunt and say you're too busy to finish you got to see it to the end. Okay? In some cases, John, the paper gets accepted, it goes to production, the production edits and formats the paper, and they've got queries. This is part of at the very end, queries. Keynes, you mentioned Keynes in the text and he's not in your references. Oh, this sentence is not very clear, what do you mean? Okay, that type of queries. John, you got 8 queries. Oh, I don't have time. I don't care if we're this close towards publication, gets rejected. Okay? You got a paper, you got to write it to the end. That's the game. Do it. Okay? Don't be a diva. Okay? If you raise an issue with the editor, do it in a polite way. That's what he's saying. New York, there you go, lobby. They're always conditionally, that's what I said. You must make the last minute required changes. Don't be difficult. Editors reserve the right to just reject a paper at any point in the process. What if a paper is accepted? It won't be published right away in a journal, but it will be published online. DOIs, remember those? Yeah, you'll get one. But then, even a couple of years ago, we used to give DOIs as soon as the paper is accepted. Now, if the paper is accepted, it's published online. If you go to the ROPE website, you look under, what is it called? Recent papers, I think. And you get the papers that have been accepted. They just haven't been assigned to an issue. Okay, and that's what counts now for your CV, is once it's been published online, that's the proof that anyone wants to, consider open source. Open source is costly. It might be a bit cheaper for Brazil. Developing countries, it's usually cheaper. On the journal's website, you have an option, and you put in where you are from. If you're a student, it'll give you, for me, from Canada, professor, it's about 2,500 US. Some universities have funds for that, by the way. For you, I don't know what it would be, but for fun, check it out. It might be 500, maybe your university has that. Open source means there's no restrictions. Anyone can download it. Okay? Second, and finally, use social media. I was telling you this morning at breakfast. He's got a paper under review and he's trying to bribe me. And we're going for breakfast. Well, that's going to do it. I want cash. But before I became editor of the Review of Political, when I created the Review of Keynesian Economics, I started a Facebook page and social media accounts. Marc Lavoie lectures. Academics, we should not have Facebook pages, journals. That's not professional, Louis-Philippe. Shame on you. And now he writes to me, can you share this on your social media? A paper I've just written, and yeah, now he's begging me to do the same, And I created, he now has a website, which I helped create, and now he's happy he's got a website. He doesn't know how to use it to update it, but that's another issue. Can you put this on my website? Before I became editor of the Review of Political Economy, 2019, and I became co-editor, the journal was averaging 22,000 downloads a year, which means you guys were downloading any article, right, 22,000 times. That's a full download. Download the article, okay? Not just looking at it, download it. I became co-editor. I started then in 2019 a Twitter account for the journal, Facebook account. Now I'm thinking about having an Instagram account. I have a YouTube account for the journal because we do webinars and stuff. The next one is by Malcolm Sawyer, who will be talking about the 80th anniversary of Pilecki's paper on full employment. That kind of stuff. And now we average about 140 to 150,000 downloads a year. 6 times, 7 times more downloads. I know that's all social media. And so recently we just got an impact factor. Rope has been around for 35 years. I become editor, use social media, and we get an impact factor. I think that kind of helped. Okay? In the 35th anniversary of the journal, 35 years, in January, I wrote in sort of like a note from the editor. And there's some papers written on journals, impact factor, and social media. And there are papers written on citations of papers. And they show that, if you promote your paper, we're no longer living in an era where you write a paper, you publish it in Rope, and people just discover it. We're in an era now where you write a paper and you promote it. Hey, look at my latest paper. Okay? Who's on Twitter here? Twitter is great for that. Okay? If you're on Twitter, follow me if you're going to submit a paper to the journal, because I am constantly not only promoting the journal, but promoting the papers within the journal. And so it's easy when you're on Twitter, I'll hashtag you, not hashtag, but I'll tag you. Oh, look at this paper, latest paper by John. Hashtag John, not hashtag, what that mean? John, I'll tag you, okay? And then you promote your paper, I promote your paper, and I promote the journal and the issue in which your paper is, okay? The more times your paper is downloaded, the more times the downloads for my journal. And the greater number of downloads, the greater the possibility that your paper will be cited. And that contributes to my impact. And I believe it is because of just the social media thing that Clarivid just said, oh, what's this journal that got 150,000 downloads? Okay? I'm not sure, but I think so. Not good anymore. And I think that's it, people. I collect art, and this is a thing from Quebecois artists. That's the latest one. Any questions or experiences you went through and you're confused about? Yes?
Thank you so much, Prof. It's not a question of necessary questions. I don't know if we can make this very fantastic record available for us.
Yeah. She's got the presentation and she can email it to everyone or something, and there's a website, yes.
All the presentations will be available for in classroom.
Okay, Google Classroom. Any questions, comments? Yes?
It's not my own experience. Thank you. First of all, it's very interesting. It's not my own experience, but of a friend, and he got an issue because two reviewers contradicted themselves. And maybe that's interesting. How would you address something like that?
It happens all the time. So, he's got a reputation of being a very nice reviewer. Okay? If he sends me a review that's negative, I'm going, wow, it means something. It means something. And so, nowadays I'll read the reviews. I know his reputation, her reputation. I evaluate, I balance, and I might just say, sorry, or you might ask at that point a third reviewer to sort of break the tie. There is another, and I might not even need. I knew there was one. Get involved. Okay, get involved. I've got two boards. I've got an advisory board, big names, big names, big names. And I got an editorial board. And Taylor and Francis tells me I've got the youngest editorial board in all the journals at Taylor and Francis. And I wrote them, I said, is that good or bad? And they go, no, that's good, that's good. So, you know, when I appoint someone to the editorial board, they tend to be young, and it tends to be for 3 years. And I might renew that for another 3 years. But I don't want a situation like the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics, where there were 3 dead editorial members for years. For years. Okay? So, I'm going to, next year, every year, I'm on a rotating, I'm going to be looking at maybe 4 or 5 new faces and getting rid of 4 or 5 faces. You know, I consider gender, I consider geography, I consider your area of expertise. You know, and I'm looking for, I like to appoint young people. I think it looks good on your CV if you're young and I just appointed 2 people in Italy, Ettore Gallo and Maria Cristina Barbieri-Goz, to the editorial board, and they both got a job, and they claim largely because they were a member of an editorial board. It just looked good. And they had publications. So, you know, get involved. If you go to a conference, if you're here, for example, take me out for coffee, talk to me about your research, and, you know, send me an email when you get home. It was really nice meeting you. Don't forget me. Remember, my area is this and this and this. I'd like to review a paper for you. Get involved, start reviewing. You know, and like I said, I have to find 200 reviewers per year. If I leave here with like 4 names of people who are willing to review, wow, that's only 196 I gotta find. It's better, okay? And I'll probably ask you to review twice a year, you know? So get involved. When asked, do reviews. I don't understand when young scholars say, no, I can't, I'm too busy. Reviews is not the same as publication, and maybe you prefer publishing a paper. But, you know, there are advantages. Look, John, who's John? John, yeah, you were sitting here. John sends me a paper, and, you know, it's a difficult decision. But you know what? John was really nice. He reviewed a couple of papers for me. You know, well, I'll give him a chance. I'll do an R&R. And like I said, after I give you an R&R, it's up to you to deliver the goods at that point, right? So I'm not really doing him a little favor, but not a huge favor. I'm just basically telling him, you got work to do. One reviewer hated your paper, okay? By the way, you can always withdraw your paper at any time. You get the reviews and you go, no. Let me tell you something else. This happens a lot. John sends me a paper, and I send it to a reviewer, and the reviewer says, I reviewed this paper 6 months ago. So it's not a case where you submit it to 2 journals. 1 journal at a time. But I submit, and it's the exact same version as 6 months ago. He did not take into consideration my comments from last time. You dead. Come on, you're getting good feedback for free. If your paper gets rejected, please change your paper according to the reviewers. And then when you send it, because I'm trying to find the best reviewer, so you know the chance that I might send it to the same reviewer are pretty high. So, you know, take advantage and rewrite your paper before sending it to another journal, okay? Offer to do reviews, offer to do a mini symposium. I might say no if you're a PhD student, but do a mini symposium with a faculty member. Talk to your professor and say, hey, what if I approached Rochon and we did a mini symposium on this topic? Right? So now you've got, it's like your father, your mother co-signing for your car loan, right? So you got the reputation of the scholar behind you, but you're willing to do the work and everything, and you do a mini symposium, 3-4 papers, maybe a call for papers. You know, look, I've got a number of calls for papers out right now from young scholars. Okay? One is the 65th anniversary of Schaffer's Production of Commodities by Means of Commodities, published in 1960, 2025. So, okay? Yeah, so get involved and go for coffee, buy me a beer. I don't drink, well, maybe I will. He did buy me a beer. I'm just saying that. It's true.
This is why I don't get my articles published.
Any questions or comments? I know it's late, so you might not. He's like about to leave. See, he's got his hand. Okay, if no question, look, send me an email if you've got a question. You submit a paper to another journal and you've got conflicting views from the review. Look, we've met, we know each other, send me an email, even if you submitted it to the Journal of Postgates and Economia. I can help you in any way I can.